Radio presents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. So, according to my count, we have very few people in the house tonight thus far. Greetings to Brother Crow. Glad you could join us. And of course, BB Foley, Straight Black Pride to our brother. Brother, you got ripped off. So, I know it's been a while. And I was shocked how long it's been. It's been over a month since I last came on. It's been a lot of things in life happening. You know what I'm saying? Life has been kicking your brother in the corners, if you will. But we're in the midst of fighting back. So before I get started, tonight's topic is border war to civil war, ? And I know we talked about the border crisis before, either last year or earlier this year. I can't remember. Maybe, brother, you got ripped off. Maybe you can remember. But I want to get deeper into it because I noticed something as I was looking into this issue. I noticed something, a reaction from that's becoming louder from you said last year. Okay, cool. It's coming louder from basically from white Americans. And this idea of a Civil War 2.0, it's starting to be verbalized publicly. And it's not just the border that's the issue, but the border could well be the linchpin to the unraveling of this country. Yep, thank you, brother. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. And so that's what we're going to talk about. And what made me think about it, this was a while ago. This might have been the end of last year. As I search for the music, is there's a new movie coming out in April, and since it's almost March, that means the new movie's almost here. Let's go with this one. Let's see. And y'all can tell me whether or not that's too loud or if that's just right. Y'all let me know. Because I did turn my mic up. So there's a movie dealing with a hypothetical civil war, and it's not a civil war in the sense of what the United States had. You just have two clear delineated sides and clear borders, and I think a couple of states might have set that out or whatever. Unlike that, this movie proposes like maybe 5 or 6 regions, something like that. And before the Straight Black Pride, Brother Kevin. And so I just wanted to kind of show the connection, because you know me, whenever they make a movie, a certain type of movie, I'm always interested in seeing it and always interested in seeing what they're going to say, because a lot of times it's predictive programming. Uh, sometimes, and then other times, it's observational, where the filmmaker is observing something and then they say, let's take it to the extreme. I think this one's a little bit of both, weirdly enough. But yeah, brother Crow, we know that part. But that's hard to prove. That's why we're starting with the first article. So what I'm gonna do, and brother, you got ripped off. You remind me. I'm going to go through a couple of articles and a video. Then we're gonna stop about an hour through, and I'm gonna pass around the old collection plate because we have a deal in place. But before I get started on this subject matter, I recently released several more episodes of the DC's Radical Thoughts. Y'all just give me a thumbs up if you are enjoying those. I think next week or this week, I have to look how I got it set up. I think the last episode or the next to last episode has already been scheduled. I only did 13 thus far. I think I have number 12 set up. So BB4 to Raw ISO Vital. So y'all give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you enjoyed the last couple of those articles. I mean, not articles. That podcast, the DC's Radical Thoughts podcast, because I have, I think, 3 in the last few days. And if you have enjoyed them, let me know what your favorite is thus far. Because I think, y'all can correct me, I think 8 have been released. Because more have been scheduled. But I think 8 have been released. And if I'm wrong, or you got ripped off, you can correct me. So like I said, those some more are scheduled. I also have some more radical reports that I'm working on that should be released this week as well. And so that means that I will have passed my obligation. BB4 days straight black pride to Sister Farnessa, who's never late. She must be coming from a hot date or something. She's always not only on time but early. Brother, you got ripped off. Brother, you got ripped off. Don't see you gonna make me go into that story. I'm gonna go into that story real quick, and then I'm gonna get started with the article. Because this I'm probably gonna do a radical thoughts on this. But for those who follow me on Instagram, did y'all see when I posted the Baba Baruti book, Homosexuality and the Feminization of Black Males? And I got a funny story about that book, and then I get started on the subject matter for the night. I was reading that book years ago. This probably, maybe 10 years ago. I was reading it on the train, coming home from work, and this younger sister looked at the book and looked at me. And looked at the book and looked at me, and then look in her eyes was kind of, because she didn't understand why I was reading the book. So like the idea that I was reading it for academic purposes didn't cross her mind. She was just looking at me like, oh my God, I can't believe he one of them. But she didn't want to say nothing to me. And I just looked at her, I was like, nah, I'm reading. I think I told her I was reading it for school or something. And she just looked at me like, oh. But it was funny because she, it was a young sister. She was just looking like, she didn't know what to think. I'm to the point where I think even if you're over a certain age and people see you reading something that's nonfiction and academic, they trying to figure out what's going on. And then the subject matter at hand really threw her for a loop. But anyway, y'all know every day, for those who follow me on Instagram, every day on Instagram during Black History Month, I post a different book. So I post about Barudi's book. And this brother comes out of nowhere and says, he calls it backward scholarship. I mean, and what's funny is he reacted to it almost seemingly instantaneously. Like he was the second person to comment, seemingly like 3 minutes after I posted it. And I was like, that's interesting. So I went and looked him up, and he's apparently or allegedly part of a well-known Pan-Africanist organization. Greetings to Straight Black Pride Sister Nina. And so I asked the brother had he read the book, and he said no. Now here's my thing. This is my thing. If you have not read the book, how can you judge the level of scholarship of the book that you have not read? That's why I asked him had he read the book, because I knew by his reaction he hadn't read the book, even though he's a quote unquote Pan-Africanist. So, that made me put up a poll and see where our people's heads were at. Fortunately, most of our people are in their right mind that follow that page and claim to be Pan-Africanists. And so, but it was interesting. It was just interesting. Then when I looked at the person, I actually saw they really didn't have a lot of followers, and whatever. But it's just interesting to know, because that's not the first time that's happened. It's happened in real life before, where I've had people tell people that I know that they're not a real revolutionary because they won't support the rainbows. Now, that was 10 years ago. That was 12 years ago. I first heard that, and I'm just looking around like, you are tripping. You know what I'm saying? But that battle still continues. So it's good to know. I'm glad when people express themselves, because now we can know who's on our side and who's not. And that's what happened with that. So I appreciate that person for expressing themselves. And then we did go back and forth in the comments, and I was just like, okay, this person is they're set on their position. Y'all know I'm not changing my position, so there's no need for us to have any further interaction or discussion. So with that being said, let's get into tonight's topic, the border crisis. And we're going to start with an old article, because I found it interesting just looking at the title. It says, the U.S. border crisis is just the tip of an international problem, which goes to what Brother Crow mentioned earlier. And of course, it's written by David S. Bernstein. Now, let us read. It says, not even 20 years into the new century, international experts are sizing up unprecedented degrees of mass migration and telling us these are not aberrations. This is the new normal for the 21st century. The crisis on the southern border of the United States is very much a part of this development. They leave their homes by the millions for many reasons: war, disaster, violence, persecution, climate change, or poverty. In the past few years, despite crackdowns to staunch the flow, more than 2 million people traveled north to Europe, whether along the Balkan route from Syria, Iran, Iraq, or Afghanistan, across the Mediterranean from Libya and Tunisia to Italy, or from Morocco and Algeria to Spain. Nearly 3 million Ethiopians were forced from their homes just last year. New conflicts in quote-unquote sub-Saharan Africa, or Black Africa, which all Africa should be black, but we got invaders still sitting there, but that's a whole nother discussion, are creating 50,000 new refugees a month from South Sudan, the Congo, Nigeria, the Central African Republic, Sudan, Eritrea, Now, what's going on in Eritrea that I don't know about? Two nearby nations already hosting more than 6 million refugees. In the Philippines, 4 million were displaced last year by a natural disaster. The country is already making plans to relocate entire cities before the ocean swallows them. Americans have mostly turned a blind eye to the implications of a globally connected world continually disrupted by large-scale population displacement. But now it has landed at our nation's doorstep. Just 6 years ago, the last Congress seriously considered immigration reform. A mere 3,750 displaced people inhabited the 2,000-mile stretch of Central America between the United States border and Costa Rica. Today, according to the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees, that number is well over 500,000. Let's go back. 3,700 to over 500,000, over 500,000. That's more. Yeah, that's more than 100 times. Anyway, 100 times more people. More than 100 times more people. The nature of population movement has accelerated faster than the debate about it has unfolded. While Democratic presidential candidates debate the merits of Obama-era policies and Republicans quote-unquote fear-monger, which they're not fear-mongering, they're telling the truth, about the threat to Western culture, and both sides view foreign policy and global economics almost exclusively through the lens of a handful of direct international relationships, almost nobody is grappling with how the world is being remade. Stop right there. That part where he says the world is being remade. If you're saying the world is being remade, the question has to be asked: who is remaking the world? Because there's one thing, and I'll give credit where credit is due, even though I have my disagreements with this person. It was, in fact, Minister Farrakhan who told me that if something is happening, then someone or something is causing something to happen. So if the world is being remade, whether it's by natural disasters or conflicts or things like that, the question has to be asked: who is remaking the world? Especially in the midst of a public plan to remake the world called the Great Reset. All right, so let's move forward. Now, population displacement will likely be a defining global issue of our current half century, just as world wars in the first half of the 20th century and independence from colonialism in the second half. Conflict and natural disaster drive millions from their homes. This leads to further economic and social disorder within and between ill-equipped countries. This pushes more people to seek refuge in more developed countries. This strains resources and stokes fears, leading them towards isolationism. This further destabilizes international order and exacerbates the consequences of conflict and disaster. The cycle is not theoretical. It is well underway. It is the greatest amount of displacement, voluntary or involuntary, in the history of the world, says Alan Burson, former commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection and Border Czar under Obama. That is a mouthful. When did they start adding all those titles to this position? Worldwide, the number of refugees under UNHCR mandate has doubled in 5 years, topping 20 million for the first time. The total number of refugees is estimated at 25.4 million. Another 41.3 million are internally displaced, meaning they've been forced by conflict or violence to move elsewhere within their home country. As many as 20 million more are displaced by natural disaster. Roughly 28 million were newly displaced just last year, according to Internal Displacement Monitoring Center in Switzerland. In 2016, to recognize the problem, the first refugee Olympic team competed in the Rio de Janeiro Games. Another one is being assembled for next year's competition in Tokyo. Burson views this acceleration in the context of rapid globalization. It's being intensified by the overall increase in the tempo of flows of goods, capital, data, technology, ideas, and everything else, he says. And of course, climate change, which will make today's record-setting migration look like the old days. All right. We're going to stop right there. We're going to stop with the climate change. And Sister Vanessa says, who benefits? That's who's doing it. Again, that we got that principle from Barbara Amos Wilson. Now, here's what's interesting about this, right? Because he talks about globalization and the increase of tempo of goods and so forth. So remember, this was written in 2019. Now, here's why all of that is kind of irrelevant in reality, because we've seen in 2020 where the flow of goods slowed down, the flow of capital stopped, the flow of data slowed down, but, well, the flow of data stayed up, but the flow of technology slowed down. But you know what didn't slow down when all that stuff slowed down? You still had people coming across the border. Right? Think about that. Because remember, the Republicans were asking the Democrats, well, hey, if we got people coming across the border and you're trying to have a vax mandate, do the people come across the border, do they have to get the jab? And remember, the Democrats were like, well, no. Yeah, exactly. Right. So we see that this article isn't 100% correct. And maybe he didn't know that at the time, because again, this is before the pandemic. Let us move forward. It says asylum applications filed in the United States, averaging around 2,500 a month 10 years ago, began averaging 10,000 a month in 2016, slowing last year only due to the Trump administration's decision to restrict the process while asylum seekers wait across the border. Those lines of desperate people waiting under the new metering policy to present themselves for quote-unquote protection have been growing. A small city's worth 10,000 refugees wait in Tijuana alone, a number that has doubled the past 3 months, according to the Associated Press. This now includes a large number of Cameroonians fleeing government repression, bringing the troubles of Central Africa to America's doorstep. Amy Roma, a Washington, D.C. energy attorney, saw it firsthand a year ago when she spent a week providing pro bono legal services at the detention center in San Antonio, Texas. I had one woman who was kidnapped twice while waiting at the border, Roma says. She eventually swam across the Rio Grande. Roma led a steady stream of traumatized women and children, terrified of gang violence that had often taken a member of the family through their credible fear interviews. Gangs is something of a misnomer. These are, according to UNHCR, sophisticated, organized criminal armed groups, often with transnational reach. All right, let's stop right there. So, they are saying that at the border, you have an organized criminal element that is armed, sitting on the doorstep of America. And the Biden administration's response is to open the border. Let's just take a moment. Right? We all read that, right? Y'all let me know I wasn't tripping. He said that what these groups would be considered is something more organized than a gang. And they're sitting on the border of America, and the Biden administration says that they basically have an open border. Does anybody think that's a good idea? I mean, for those who live here in America, does that make you feel safe that the people who come across the border and move into your communities aren't a part of this vast criminal element that has transnational reach? Like, think about what they just wrote. They have transnational reach, a criminal cabal sitting at the doorstep of the United States of America. And the president of the United States has an open border policy to let in the criminal cabal. And you have people, black people, who say that they don't want this type of illegal immigration, but they're still going to vote for Mr. Biden. I'm just going to take a deep breath. Y'all take a deep breath with me. And I just need anyone to just make that make sense. All righty. Now, Sister Vanessa says, well, they're already whipping on the popo, so Biden and the hats know what they're doing. Yeah, how about that? What's interesting is I have so many articles, and that's not even one of them. I guess I'm just going to have to do a separate video for that, but we're all familiar with that story. So let's get back to where we were. Wait a minute. I get back to my all right, my bad. Human error. Now it says the stories Roma heard when she could coax the women to talk about it were hellish. The frenzy process was a bit like driving a race car on an unfamiliar and ever-changing track. We were about to walk into one credible fear interview and found that an hour ago, the Attorney General had issued a new directive on how to conduct the interviews. As green as she was, the refugees were lucky to have Roma there. The vast majority of women with children have no attorney at that credible fear hearing. Having one makes it 14 times more likely that they will be allowed to stay in the United States to apply for asylum, according to one study. This is no short-term blip likely to end with a new election or peace agreement. An international framework under development targets 2030. Again, everybody's familiar with Agenda 2030 for achieving significant reductions in violence. In fact, 10 years is pretty optimistic, says Catherine Johnson, policy advocate, coordinator for American Friends Service Committee. I've never heard of that. As Central American governments destabilize, the effects go well beyond gang violence. Rural Guatemalans face poverty and discrimination. The dry corridor is expanding. Historically low coffee prices have impoverished growers. But I can tell you one thing. I don't know if they're benefiting, but coffee prices are no longer historically low, at least not where I shop. But I digress. U.S. policy is so ill-equipped to deal with this, Johnson says. Thousands and thousands of people are desperate enough to leave their homes and face a harrowing journey to the unknown. Yet, it's kind of a stretch to call these people refugees under our system. Kind of a stretch? The Trump administration's apparent indifference or outright hostility to these asylum seekers has made an easy focus for the country's ire and compassion. But few anywhere across the political spectrum are publicly discussing the real challenges and inadequacies. Nor are they pondering the U.S. role with similar and much larger population displacements elsewhere in an increasingly connected and interdependent world. I'm going to stop right there. Now, one thing we've seen over the years, as long as I've been alive, and the U.S. has been in conflicts that they haven't labeled wars, so they don't say that they lost. But what normally happens in the United States is the United States picks a side in a war. In the 80s, it was allegedly to fight communism or whatever the case may be. A lot of times that side loses. And then those people come here. So that started all the way back in Vietnam. Because they got the pictures of people running out of Saigon and trying to hop on the last helicopter and the last plane and all that. So that started there. I mean, that's not the first place it started, but I saw when I was a little boy, they would show those pictures later on, like in the 80s and early 90s. They would show that. I think that probably happened in Korea. I know a lot of people have come over here from Afghanistan. I'm not sure about Iraq, but considering the pattern, I don't think it would be any different. Now, it says, nor are they pondering the U.S. role with similar much larger population displacements elsewhere in increasing connected work. Instead, the U.S. is joining the isolationist backlash seen in Britain, Hungary, and Austria, and elsewhere, in which migrant-weary nations turn inward, pushing the problems back towards the less developed countries that are already straining. For example, Trump administration recently inked a safe third country agreement with Guatemala that will force those fleeing Honduras and El Salvador to apply for asylum there, which itself is a main source of refugees. The global populist nativist backlash will only worsen, Burson says, as quote-unquote climate change exacerbates the problem. And he warns the backlash to the backlash can also be unmoored from reality. Burson finds the American left, including most of the candidates for president, sounding naive as they compete to sound welcoming to most migrants. To think that the American system should redress every humanitarian issue in the world is laudable, but foolish. Who to take and how many, how to process them, how to accommodate them, what levels of violence might follow them. These are just a few of the questions that America will need to work out for a problem that is only beginning to heat up, so to speak. But he's right about that part. In 2018, more than 1.2 million people were forced from their homes due to natural disaster in just one country, accounting for some 10% of all disaster caused internal displacement in the world last year. That was the United States. Almost all of this was due to three events: Hurricane Florence in August, Hurricane Michael in October, and the California wildfires in July, August, and November. The vast majority of people affected later returned. Still, tens of thousands were still homeless even months later. The number and severity of these disasters has increased and will continue to, yet the country continues to react individually to these and other incidents rather than incorporate them into ongoing policy discussion. For example, housing affordability. Reports show that in the aftermath of last year's disasters, already soaring housing prices, exacerbated by the destruction of existing stock, have prevented people from rebuilding or relocating. This has led policy experts to recognize the need to consider the housing problem proactively for areas likely to suffer displacement in coming years. This includes not only the large targets of hurricanes, wildfires, inland flooding, but pretty much every urban center on the coast. But you can forget about that part. This has led policy experts to recognize the need. Similar concerns await in infrastructure, finance, agriculture, health, security, and other areas, not just for climate change itself, but for the frequent relocation of populations, both temporary and permanent, that will result. All right, so let's stop right there. So, the interesting part about the last part of that article that I'm going to read is that it really shows how displacing populations can cause destabilization of the countries that people are coming to, which in this case is the United States of America. So that is interesting. Now, our next article, and I'm assuming that the sound levels are good because nobody complained. As I'm beginning to lose my voice, we have from this year February 22nd. That was what, 3 days ago? Governor Greg Abbott's border tactics forced Democrats to confront migrant crisis in their own backyard. All right, let us read. This is from CNN. It says Texas Governor Greg Abbott's escalating border crisis tactics have brought the migrant crisis to the doorstep of Democratic-led cities. You lying about that part. Facing the issue at the forefront in a heated election cycle and forcing Democrats to answer to it. President Joe Biden and Abbott have sparred over the handling of the U.S.-Mexico border for years, as the Republican governor has taken more aggressive actions to try to stem the flow of migration. But his busing of migrants to deep blue cities, with a total of more than 100,000 sent to Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., elevated the issue in the minds of voters thousands of miles away from the U.S.-Mexican border. Now, let's stop right there. Here's what's interesting. Amongst our regular listeners, I know we have people that live near Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Denver. I'm not sure we have a regular listener from Chicago. So, needless to say, we're all familiar with this issue, and we've seen it up close. BB40 and Straight Black Pride, the brother Dessalines. So we know the reality of Mr. Abbott saying, if I got a problem, you got a problem, in sending those people here. We've seen them. Like I remember going to the store and seeing a type of Hispanic group of people that I had never seen that looked like that. They were obviously Hispanic in origin, but their look was not similar to the people that we normally see in this area. And Sister Vanessa says they don't want the border closed, which is why they're throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at Trump. We're going to get to that. But yes, I agree with you, sister. Like everything. And they're putting black people, and especially black women, at the forefront of the attack on Trump in order to turn the ire of the Trump supporters away from the people who are in charge of like the Attorney General, who we know is a small hat. And instead you see the Fannie Willises and some of these other people of the world, and they are the ones who garner the attention, and from the Trump supporters, negative attention. And then that goes back to inflame their thoughts about how they feel about black people. So that's not an accident. Let us move forward. Says, but his busing, yep, my bad. We already did that. Let's move down. What Abbott was and is doing as shameful. Wait, hold up. Pause. How is what he's doing shameful? He is trying to protect the border and bring attention to the situation by spreading it to other people so that they can see how much of an issue it is. In my opinion. Oh, okay. Let's see who. Hold up. All right. Let me read this again, because now it's more funny when I see who said it. Let me add the quotes. Quote, what Abbott was and is doing, as shameful as it is to human beings, as political pawns, it was effective in drawing the attention of people and communities far away from the border to the challenge we've been facing on the border for years. Says Texas Representative Veronica Escobar. a Democrat who serves as a co-chair for Biden's re-election campaign. Now, let's ask ourselves. We know what type of name Veronica Escobar is. Is Miss Escobar in any way, shape, or form interested in closing the border? Everybody who thinks that she's interested in closing the border, Miss Veronica Escobar, y'all put a 1 in the chat and I'll sit here and wait for it. Now, the White House has recently taken a tougher approach to the southern border, embracing potential measures such as shutting it down. Sources told CNN the Biden administration now considering executive action to restrict migrants' abilities to seek asylum at the U.S.-Mexican border if they crossed illegally, a maneuver reminiscent of the controversial action from Donald Trump. Now, see, that's interesting. That's a political move where you say, all right, I'm on the wrong side of history on this one. So what I'll do is I'll steal the tactic of the guy that I'm going to be running against for president so that he can use it against me. I mean, you talk about political calculus and pandering. I mean, it's just, oh my God. That's just hilarious. All right. Now, but the Texas governor's handling of the border has placed him front and center on an issue that Republicans are seeking to make a dominant theme in 2024. Hell, that ain't hard. Republican governors, eager to play their own roles in what the party sees as a political winner, have rushed to back Abbott, including sending National Guard troops to aid his efforts. I want y'all to stick a pin in that part. Other states are sending their National Guard troops to back up Governor Abbott to stem the tide of illegal immigration at the border, right? Earlier this month, more than a dozen governors traveled to the border city of Eagle Pass, where Texas has sought to limit U.S. Border Patrol's access in a challenge to the administration's border policy. Says, we've seen the catastrophic consequences of Joe Biden's open border policy, Abbott said. Abbott's migrant busing program, which he launched in 2022 to fierce criticism from Democrats, has pressured blue states to contend with an issue that had previously unfolded hundreds and sometimes 1,000 miles away. In January, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker took out a full-page ad in the Austin American-Statesman newspaper, urging Abbott to stop sending buses of migrants to Chicago amid below zero temperatures. Chicago's cold, I swear it seems like it's cold 3/4 of the year, but anyway, I digress. In Colorado, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston warned that the city was at a breaking point. And in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams filed a lawsuit seeking $700 million from 17 charter bus companies that Abbott has used to bus migrants to the city. Democratic strategists have acknowledged the political effect of Abbott's moves. The fear of Abbott's stunts, quote unquote, working to scare people, was there from the beginning. And there's a lot of people running around right now scared that it's working. One Democratic strategist told CNN. He played into the idea of pitting immigrants against the American people. Oh, stop right there. Stop. Let's stop. What's missing from that word? Because he said pitting immigrants. No, that the young people say, that's cap. Pitting illegal immigrants. Illegal. Or if you want to use the word undocumented, right? No one is going to the immigration office when people raise their hand after passing their civics test and they give their pledge to the flag and all that good stuff. Nobody's going in there and smacking up people. Because those are what? Legal immigrants. People are mad about what? Illegal immigrants. There's a difference. Back to where we were. Migrants often move to cities within the United States if they're eligible to be released from government custody as they go through their immigration proceedings. But Abbott sent thousands of migrants to select cities with no heads up, catching officials by surprise and leaving them scrambling to respond. White House officials have slammed the Texas governor for using migrants as political pawns and laid blame on Republicans for not moving forward with legislation in Congress that would overhaul the immigration system. Let's stop right there. The problem is not the immigration system. The problem is illegals. You know what I'm saying? I know this is CNN and they keep trying to reframe this thing. No, the problem isn't the system. The problem is illegals, people who are breaking the law by coming into the country over the border. That's the problem. The solution is to, as they say, secure the border. Now, instead of sending weapons, money, troops, and everything else to places like the Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, and wherever other place in the so-called Middle East and Eastern Europe that troops may be, because there are places that I know people that they're at that I can't remember right now. And some places they aren't talking about publicly. You literally have to talk to people in the military. Because none of us knew those people, those 3 black people that got killed, none of us knew that the U.S. even had troops there for the most part, unless you were really paying attention to the movement of American troops. And indeed, brother. And of course, Israel. Now, Brother Kevin says Governor Abbott is doing what the Democrats want. They're the fools that want us to sanctuary cities. Hey, you got to be careful what you ask for. How about that, brother? Now, behind the scenes, administration officials have worked with city and state officials to address issues such as finding enough shelter space for migrants and providing additional federal funds. Now, we talked about how this could be destabilizing. One of the ways it could be destabilizing is putting more stress on the American economy, because America is, let us not forget, $34 trillion in debt. That's $34 trillion. That's $34,000 billion, if I'm not mistaken. They take all the time you need to think about how ridiculous that number is. All right. Now, some of those efforts, spurred in part by the outcry stemming from Abbott's busing program, led to nearly 500,000 Venezuelan migrants in the U.S. being eligible for a form of humanitarian protection and accompanying work permit, and resulted in more resources for cities receiving migrants. 500,000 Venezuelan migrants alone. That they basically, if you give them a work permit and so-called humanitarian protection, you basically legalized them without legalizing them. 500,000 people from one country, a country that for years they've been telling us is an enemy of the United States. Right? Brother Dessalines says exactly like the plan from Europa. Shit, right, brother. I mean, pretty much, right? I mean, look just like the plan from Europa. On Capitol Hill, a bipartisan group of senators negotiated a border compromise, but Republican lawmakers quickly turned on the measure following opposition from Trump, the GOP presidential front runner. Oh, wait a minute, I missed a part. I missed a paragraph before that. My bad. It says, while Abbott has played an outsized role in driving the border security debate well beyond Texas lines, Democrats are seizing on congressional Republicans blocking tough border security measures to argue the GOP isn't serious on the issue. Now, let's stop right there. First of all, when that was being debated, the border security issue was being tied into other things, including money for, as the brother just said, Israel and Ukraine. So whether or not the Republicans are serious or not, which I don't think they really are, or the Democrats are serious, we know they're not. Because to be serious, let's be serious for a moment, right? Let us discuss the United States government and indeed white people in general in America. When the white people are serious, what happens? Somebody gets blown up, shot up, stabbed up, hung, beheaded, or some other type of extreme violence takes place when white people get serious. You know how I know? Because black people have been around in this country for hundreds of years, and we know when white people get serious, somebody dies. So the idea that anybody is serious about the border situation and nobody's dead yet means that nobody's serious yet. BB482 777-9311. Long time no see. All right, let's get back to the article. It says Tom Suozzi, a Democratic winner of a race in New York, beat back Republican efforts to blame New York City's migrant crisis on Democrats. He criticized Biden at times for his handling of the border and called for temporary closure. But Suozzi also lambasted Trump and Republican Democrats for the collapse of the bipartisan deal. That's interesting. So they're saying that a Democrat won literally by calling for a temporary closing of the border, which shows how much of an issue this is. That a Democrat wins an election by calling for the border to be closed. Republicans on Capitol Hill argue that Suozzi's approach won't translate across the political map this fall. He says that their candidate ran like a Republican. He sounded like a Republican, talking about border and immigration because that's the top issue on the hearts and minds of everybody. I make the argument that the top issue is always the economy and the fact that you can't buy, what was it, McDonald's? Somebody charging like $18 for a hamburger or something? I'm going to go with what George Bush says. The economy is stupid. But I will say the immigration in a second, or else I wouldn't be talking about tonight. Let's move forward. But Escobar argued that the GOP's seriousness on the issue was called into question following the blocking of the Senate border bill, which included tough enforcement measures such as providing extraordinary powers for the Homeland Security Secretary to shut down the border. The Texas Congresswoman welcomed her party leaning in on immigration. Again, that sounds good, but can we be honest here? The way to solve the immigration problem is very simple. Address the immigration problem the way you address other problems. Send your troops down there. As I've said privately, put up a big giant neon sign or one of these new electronic signs that they have at football stadiums that says we're closed, and put it in like 10 different languages. You know what I'm saying? Put it in Arabic, put it in Farsi, put it in Swahili, put it in Spanish, put it in French, put it in Chinese, put it in Korean, put it in Japanese. We're closed. That's it. And put a bunch of military vehicles and some armed forces personnel down there across the entire southern border and just say we're closed. Period. That's the solution. Sounds ridiculous, but it's also very simple. And if anybody wants to come across after you say we're closed, Just tell them dudes to act like they're all black people. You know what I'm saying? They'll take care of it from there. So that's all of that article that I want to read. We're going to move on to the next article. What to know as Republican governors, consider sending more National Guard troops to Texas border. And this is from a month ago. So I think they actually already did that, but it's worth reading part of this. Let's see. Says, as Republicans cheer on Texas Governor Greg Abbott's escalating feud with the Biden administration over immigration enforcement, some governors are considering deploying National Guard members to the border. Again, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has fortunately dropped out the race because he can't figure out whose side he's on. Anyway, was among the first to commit more personnel to Texas, announcing he would send hundreds of additional Guard members as tensions grow between state authorities and the U.S. government over who has the power to enforce immigration policies, where and how. Republicans say tougher actions along the border are needed in response to record levels of illegal crossings, but sending Guard members to the border is not new. DeSantis is one of more than a dozen Republican governors who sent state National Guard units to the southern border since 2021. His latest deployment comes as Texas continues to deny U.S. border agents entry to a popular crossing spot for migrants in the border city of Eagle Pass. It says what is happening at the border. At the center of the clash between Texas officials and the federal government is Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, which has become one of the busiest locations for people attempting to cross into the U.S. illegally from Mexico. Earlier this month, troops from the Texas National Guard seized the park and began turning away federal immigration authorities despite pleas from U.S. government officials. Immigration enforcement is typically a federal responsibility. Abbott has said he will continue implementing new immigration measures, calling it a constitutional right to self-defense. Earlier this month, the United States Supreme Court ruled that federal agents were allowed to remove razor wire placed by Texas officers along the border with Mexico, including in Shelby Park. Texas has since installed more razor wire in Eagle Pass, which was not prohibited under the Supreme Court's order. Now that's interesting. The Biden administration has argued that the wiring makes it difficult and dangerous for federal agents to perform their duties. Okay. Other measures taken by Abbott as part of his border security initiatives include a floating barrier installed in the Rio Grande near Eagle Pass, which has also been challenged by federal officials. Florida has already sent more than 1,000 Guard members, troopers, and other officers to the Texas border since last May, according to the Florida Division of Emergency Management. At least a dozen governors have sent deployments ranging in size from a few dozen Guard members to more than 100, including those of Arkansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Virginia, and West Virginia. South Dakota GOP Governor Kristi Noem was the first to send 50 Guard members to Texas in 2021, which were paid by a private Republican donor who offered $1 million to make the mission possible. 2 years later, she deployed 50 more. Some governors have also looked beyond the National Guard, including Idaho Governor Brad Little, who said last week he would send additional members of the state police to Texas. What do they do? The most recent Guard deployments have been in support of Abbott's border mission known as Operation Lone Star, which began shortly after President Biden took office. Many people have been used for surveillance, such as spotting illegal crossings. Migrants are then turned over to federal immigration authorities. Although Abbott has also empowered Texas National Guard members to arrest migrants on misdemeanor trespassing in some areas. National Guard members have also installed barricades and razor wire. After Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds sent more than 100 Guard members and more than 30 state police to Texas last year, she credited the deployment with directly credited deployments with being directly involved in dozens of human smuggling cases and arrests. But South Dakota records show that some days troops had little to do. During a rush deployment of Texas National Guard members at the start of the mission, some also complained of low morale and uneven patrols. Trespassing arrests have been a key part of Abbott's nearly $10 billion border mission, which may soon be phased out under a new state law set to take effect in March, which allows police anywhere in Texas to arrest migrants who are suspected of entering the U.S. illegally. All right. Let's stop right there. Now, let's see. Brother, You Got Ripped Off says, when Barack was in office, ICE ran through Denver on a daily basis. Once they got the territory they wanted for gentrification, we've seen the illegals being let back in, even though Denver is a sanctuary city. All right, that's interesting. So, what we're going to do is we're going to play. Actually, what we're going to do, we're going to stop the music first. Let's put a pause on the music. We're going to play this video dealing with the governor and the other governors who are backing him up. So let's look at this clip.
End quote. Idaho Representative Russ Fulcher commended Little and the other governors, posting in part on his social media, quote, migrant encounters at our southern border hit a new record high of 302,000 in December. This brings the total to more than 7 million since President Biden took office, and that is just what we know of. As the president refuses to close our border, states across the country feel the impacts regardless of geographical location, end quote.
Man, that was quick. All right. That clip was quicker than I remember. Now, let's go to our next clip. And let's look at it from a Democratic perspective. We saw what the Republicans were trying to do. Now let's look at the Democrats. As I almost dropped something. It says migrants in New York City will receive prepaid debit cards, not credit cards, for designated goods. I'm trying to figure out why they're showing these black people. Let's see, what does it say? It says an immigrant family showing their paperwork to security guards at Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. All right. Says the claim New York City is giving credit cards to migrants living in the U.S. illegally. AP's assessment, missing context. The city is launching a pilot program that will provide migrants with prepaid debit cards to buy only food and baby supplies, according to a spokesperson for the mayor. Participants will be allowed to shop with the cards at bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, and convenience stores. The goal is to cut costs, officials said. The facts: amid a massive influx of migrants to New York City, social media users have been misrepresenting the new program with false claims about the type of aid participants will receive. It says lunatic Democrats handing out credit cards to foreigners while Americans are struggling. How about starving? But anyway. Says the Facebook post reads, want to bet that New York City's illegal crisis is going to get worse. 53 billion in free credit cards ensure that it will. New York will fall very soon, but migrants will get prepaid debit cards as part of the New York pilot program, not credit cards, with which they will only be permitted to purchase food and baby supplies at certain retailers. Okay. Says the cards are a possible replacement for non-perishable food boxes that currently provides to migrants. They will be loaded with an average of $12.52 per person per day for 28 days, according to Kayla Mamalak, a spokesperson for New York City Mayor Eric Adams. SNAP and WIC, federally funded health and nutrition programs, already use similar prepaid cards to dole out benefits. Yeah, that's true. New York City has allocated $53 million to the pilot program, which officials say will save $600,000 per month. Oh, that is 53 million. Did I say 53 billion? My bad. It'll save 600,000 per month and 7.2 million annually. The program will also allow migrants to purchase food and baby supplies of their choosing. Adams said at a press conference on Monday that beyond savings, officials hope using the cards at area retailers will help stimulate the economy. So the government's going to give money to illegals so that they can spend the money in local businesses so they can ramp up the economy so that they can collect taxes on the money that they gave out to go to the businesses, the illegals to go to the businesses so they can collect the taxes on. I don't know how economically sound that is. That sounds kind of bogus. Y'all let me know. What do y'all think about that? Is that sound economic theory? Let us get back to music. Hey, brother, you got ripped off. Say that's called a stimulus, not baby care. Yeah, right. And, you know, he said, brother, 10 minutes left. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know about that. But anyway, credit cards and debit cards are two very different types of payment methods. When using a credit card, a consumer borrows money that must repay on a certain due date. Debit cards are linked to a bank or credit union account, meaning one generally can't spend more money than they have in the account. Prepaid debit cards must be loaded with money before they can be used, as they are not linked to a bank or credit union account. Thank you for telling us the difference, Mamalak. Miss Mamalak. We will not provide prepaid debit cards. We will provide prepaid debit cards to an initial 500 migrant families with children who may use the prepaid card exclusively at bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, convenience stores to ensure the money is spent on food and baby supplies. She wrote in an email. Mamalak explained that participants will be required to sign an affidavit affirming that they will be using these cards for the intended purposes and that doing otherwise will risk removal from the program. Mobility Capital Finance, or MoCaFi, the company that New York City is partnering with to launch the program, confirmed that AP that the cards are not credit cards. MoCaFi said the program is expected to begin later this month. If the program is successful, the city will expand it, Adams said at Monday's press conference. This is part of AP's efforts to address widely shared so-called misinformation. All right, thank you, AP, for that. Now, I am missing. If it sounds like I'm looking for something, it's because I am, because I realize now that I had an article on who some of the new people are entering the country, but I'm missing that article. And whether you got ripped off says, who wants to bet those cards are linked to the Federal Reserve? So I'm going to read one more article and then I'm going to go to this video because I'm missing. I'm missing an article. I don't know what I did. But let's look at this part. It says the immigrant crisis may bankrupt cities such as New York, Denver, and Chicago as federal funds fall short. So literally, one article, we have Mr. Adams, the mayor, saying they may expand the program, and CNBC is saying that this thing could bankrupt the city. Let's check it out. It says the recent surge of migrants has put major cities across the U.S. under significant financial pressure. I think it's at this point politically unsustainable for the Biden administration to maintain this unlimited flow that's essentially into what's essentially a welfare state network of cities like New York, Denver, and Chicago. Simon Hankinson, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank based in Washington, D.C. I actually know where their building is. Let's stop right there. Why don't we in the Black community have foundations that do research to improve our condition that we help fund? Because living here in Washington, D.C., if you know what you're looking for, you see these types of foundations all around the city, right? You have to, well, not all around the city, but in a certain section of the city, you see different ones around. And to my knowledge, possibly with the exception of something connected to the NAACP, we don't have an actual organized, funded, supported by a group of people directly for the benefit of Black people foundation that and think tank that does research. If anybody know if I'm missing something, if I'm overlooking something, and remember the key word in that was funded, y'all let me know. That as pressure continues, cities such as Chicago and New York have begun putting restrictions on the busing of some migrants from the South. But experts say more federal assistance and funding are necessary to ensure that cities can survive the ongoing crisis. Says the current level of federal funding provided to state and local government is a drop in the bucket, compared to the need. According to Debu Gandhi, Senior Director of Immigration Policy at the Center for American Progress, a nonpartisan and progressive policy institute. Congress has provided a very small amount of money of $800 million for a FEMA program for the entire country the last fiscal year to assist cities in aiding these quote-unquote newcomers. But cities say that amount is far from enough. For instance, the $145 million allocated to New York City is less than 10% of what the city spent on migrant services in fiscal 2023, according to Migration Policy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank. This is a whole spectrum of housing of services needed for people who are new to a place, new to a country, new to a city, says Muzaffar Christie, a senior fellow at the Migration Policy Institute. These are complicated issues to manage, so the city, the state, and the federal government, frankly, were not prepared for it. Was that? Oh, and that's it. So they have a video they say you can watch. This shows how much pressure is put on it. All right, that article was shorter than I thought. So, all right, so let's recap. We have the Democrats, we have the Republicans who are in the states near the border or entry points to America, such as Texas and Florida. California's doing their own thing. They're sending people to Democratic states. The Democratic states are taking in these people and trying to take care of them. And now it's possible that their cities are going to go bankrupt, right? So this is a clear delineation on this issue that people have these two totally different ideas about how to address this issue. And that's why I said from border war to civil war, question mark. Because whenever you think about it, you have 25 governors. In other words, exactly half the governors in America who have one position. And presumably that leaves 25 governors who have the opposite position, right? So one thing I want to do is, because I didn't have the article, I want to show this video real quick of the latest group of people who are coming into the country that only recently have people been talking about, and we're just going to discuss the ramifications of this group of people coming into the country. So here we go. Let's load that up.
China are now the fastest growing group of people entering the United States illegally from Mexico.
China?
Why are we seeing these growing numbers? Here's what we know.
New York?
Customs and Border Protection reported more than 24,000 Chinese migrant encounters at the southern border last fiscal year. In 2021, that number was just 450.
Did you just arrive here in the United States?
The migrants previously told NewsNation reporters that they're escaping the Chinese Communist Party and plan to seek asylum in the United States.
向往美国的自由。
Yearning for American freedom.
Some fly to Ecuador, where no visa is needed, and then travel north.
厄瓜多尔、巴拿马。
Others are flying into Tijuana Airport before being guided across the border by smugglers. The Chinese migrants are reportedly willing to pay cartels up to $35,000 for smuggling services. And for a lot of them, it pays off. More than 50% of Chinese asylum applications were granted in the 2023 fiscal year. That's much higher than the average across all nationalities, which is only 14%. So why are these migrants seeking asylum instead of trying to enter the US legally with a visa? One possible reason is that the United States tightened visa restrictions for people from China over the last several years. In 2016, the US issued 2.2 million temporary visas. In 2022, that number dropped to just 160,000.
They've always consistently had high numbers of asylum seekers. I think second to that is the processing times in the embassies, the US embassies in China are taking so long. Also, it's getting harder for a lot of them to maybe get tourist visas. So some of those folks may have come here as students, tourists, everything like that before, and then ultimately decide, hey, I can't return to my country and seek asylum that way, versus now they can't even get into the US that way. So maybe they're taking this very desperate measure to do the journey even from China.
Social media has also likely played a role in the border crossings, allowing potential migrants to better understand the process and see what the journey is like to enter the United States.
¿Cuántas familias están aquí?
All right. Let's talk about that. Now, Brother Kevin says, this is also showing the hypocrisy of America. If the Chinese are supposed to be an enemy, man, brother, I got to put that on the screen. Because that's my question. Let's read. This is also showing the hypocrisy of America. If the Chinese are supposed to be an enemy, then why are they entering the country illegally? Here's another question. If these people are desperate asylum seekers, how do they have $35,000 to pay to the cartels to smuggle them into the country? You don't, I mean, most Americans don't have $35,000 to take a vacation. Some Americans don't make $35,000 a year. Right? But these poor, desperate, freedom-seeking people are paying $35,000 to the cartels to come into the country illegally. And 777-9311 says, what if these people are hired guns to seize land from so-called Americans? China's an interesting place. So China has illegal immigrants coming into America at the same time that China is trying to colonize parts of Africa. Interestingly enough, China has a real cozy relationship with the small hats, and I didn't understand it until I understood the origin of communism. Right? So the reason, and I had the article, I must have just accidentally took it down, but I noticed this when I was watching 60 Minutes like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they talked about the Chinese being like the new number one people that are coming here. And I just stopped. I'm like, wait a minute. China is, I'm not saying it's as far away as you can get, but coming here from China is not easy. They talk about, and again, they're talking about people flying into Tijuana, paying people $35,000 and smuggling them in here. And yet we're supposed to believe that these people are so oppressed and they need to seek a new way of life. And people that need to seek a new way of life aren't at $35,000. I mean, I'm just saying. Right? I mean, y'all stop me when I'm lying. Does this just not, is something not quite right about this? Does something feel not right about this? Does something feel, is it, it doesn't, white people say it doesn't pass the smell test, right? But I just wanted to put that out there because it's something we need to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna read. Brother, you got ripped off. Is it that time? All right, brother, you got ripped off. He's already passing around the collection. So, all right, let me just put this on the table. Here's the reality of the situation. I have, as we know, some of you were here in the live stream at the time, made a deal with you all that if I put up at least 4 pieces of content per month, that you all will help cover the cost of the maintaining the show. So here's the deal. As you all know, and shared with you all, maintaining the cost of the software, that's $30. But here's what I'm going to do, because Sister Ray took care of that. What I am going to do is, for every person who donates $25 or more on the year, you will get one of the videos that I have edited. Now, Brother You Got Ripped Off and Sister Ray are going to get copies of the 2019 Africa versus Everybody, which was dedicated to Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Now, I know I did the lecture, but I didn't have access to the video for a long time. Y'all can thank Brother You Got Ripped Off for helping me fix my computer and get access to it. It's been pretty much edited, so it'll be ready to go. I'm going to tell you this, and I know y'all know I don't normally do this. That one is worth your while. We also got the 2022 Hidden Enemies lecture, which is a different version, but it was also for Dr. Khalid. That's worth your while. And I forgot, but Sister Cindy edited the Goddess Black Woman lecture from, I believe, 2022 as well. So those are your choices. But here's the thing. Here's the catch, if you will. I have to change. Well, no, not change. I have to upgrade my Dropbox account in order to be able to distribute these videos because of the volume of the videos. They passed the, I had it at 2 gigabytes for the price I was paying, but they're all over 3 or over. So I had to upgrade that, which costs more money. So that is where we are. You know what I'm saying? So it is Well, I am dependent upon you all. If we get more than $25 tonight, then I can get those lectures out probably on Tuesday. And if we get if we get $75, then that will cover the cost for the StreamYard for next month, the music for next month, and yeah, that'll cover almost everything. And so that is where we are. And I concur with brother, you got ripped off. Those 3 lectures, pretty outstanding. Y'all know I normally don't brag about anything, but I actually had to rewatch them to edit them, and I was kind of surprised. Especially one of them, because the way it was filmed was excellent, and I didn't have to do a lot of work editing, which was great for me. So that is that. So I will let you all know. Let me check my phone, because I actually got it on silence. All right, we do have one donation. I will let you all know if and when we pass the $25 mark, and we will go from there. Now, back to where we were. So one thing I want to do, stop the music real quick. I wanted to show this clip. First of all, how many people, well, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna show the clip. Then I'll ask the question. So let me show this clip real quick.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens? We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death. What?
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
Move, move, move!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go, 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 go!
God bless America.
All right. Now, somebody may be asking, why in the world are you playing a movie clip, brother? First of all, how many people have seen that movie clip or heard of that movie? Put a 1 in the chat and I will wait. Well, actually, I won't wait. I'll be finding the next article while y'all do that. And the reason I played that is because of our next article. It says, and this is from the Eurasia Review from last year, August 2023, says U.S. Civil War 2.0, a horror scenario is becoming increasingly likely, question mark. right? It says, in recent years, the American public has been fiercely divided. Divisions are based on ideological and political orientation. On one side, there are the left-leaning liberal Democrats, and on the other side are the right-leaning conservative Republicans. Although the divisions between left and right in today's politics are quite flawed and sometimes confusing, Americans are still divided that way. As a rule, liberals vote for candidates of the Democratic Party and conservatives for Republican candidates, although they are often disappointed when they come to power. For somebody that's not in America, they pretty much got it down. Says the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is a special person in many ways. With all due respect to his unconventional political talents, Trump's strongest legacy or lasting effect is the fierce polarization of American society. Let's stop right there. No. Donald Trump did not start the polarization of American society. Because if Donald Trump started the polarization, we would not have had a civil war 100 years ago. You can make the argument that Black people being imported into America started the polarization of American politics. Anyway, let us move forward. It says, thanks to Trump, divisions have further escalated, but he is not the cause of these political divisions. The cause can be found in the U.S. political system. The level of outrage in American society in the late 2010s and early 2020s can only be compared to the time leading up to the Civil War in the 1850s. Until 10 years ago, the idea of a new civil war in America seemed like a science fiction scenario. But in recent years, this scenario is being talked about more and more publicly, and it is becoming a real political possibility. An increasing number of political scientists, sociologists, historians, and journalists are talking about the possibility of a Civil War 2.0, which would be a conflict between blue and red America. All right. Y'all hear this, right? This is analysis from people outside of America looking at the political situation and reporting what they see. Says the Civil War is already being waged informally. Says 5 or 6 years ago, some experts like the University of Tennessee law professor Glenn Harlan Reynolds went so far as to claim that the Civil War was already well underway. In 2018, political scientist Thomas Schaller wrote that America is at the beginning of a soft civil war. And author Tom Ricks wrote that the country appears to be sliding in that direction. Early in 2017, clashes erupted in Charlottesville and Berkeley, where radical right-wing and left-wing groups such as white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and alt-right clashed with Antifa, socialists, and anarchists. Let's stop right there. Let's identify the players based upon this. This says that white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and alt-right, all of those people are what we would define as white people, right? Antifa, socialists, and anarchists are what? Because we've seen those situations, and that was a bunch of white people fighting a bunch of white people. But who are the people that use the banners of Antifa, socialists, and anarchists? Those are hats. So literally, what they're talking about is what Jeannie classified as deep state versus white nationalism. All right, let's move forward. Says occasional clashes between the radical left and right with injuries and deaths continued in the years to come. In 2018, some Democratic members of Congress called for boycotts and confrontations with members of the Trump administration in public places such as coffee shops, hotels, and restaurants. This is frightening for a democratic country, and something similar happened when a radical follower of Bernie Sanders wounded Republican Congressman Steve Scalise in 2017. Although right-wing incidents are condemned by everyone, left-wing excesses go uncondemned by the liberal public. Or maybe the liberal media? Anyway, and therefore it is not strange that celebrities such as actors and athletes, usually liberal-oriented, send unpleasant messages to Republican politicians. Business Insider published a poll in October 2020 that said most Americans believe the U.S. is already in the midst of a cold civil war 2.0. It's evident that the stratification of society on a socio-economic basis. No, excuse me. It's evident that there is a stratification of society on a socio-economic basis. Police and armed violence, and inadequate health system, extremely expensive tuitions, minority problems, problems of the white population, problems of poverty and inequality, the disappearance of industry, and increase in the number of exclusive rich people and more poor people are just some of the social problems which Republicans and Democrats have little interest to solve, at least most politicians in office. I would contend that most politicians in office are not qualified to solve these problems, and those that are, who have simple, no-nonsense solutions, generally are ignored. However, major problems lead to the radicalization of disenfranchised groups who are seduced by radical groups as well as by leading politicians. Both Obama, Trump, and Biden used some of the mentioned problems in order to come to power through promises, but little has changed in practice. This is primarily due to the quote-unquote deep state, which does not allow major changes to the existing political order, which has been in force for more than 200 years. Although the two big parties win about 99% of the vote, they do not solve the problems. The people still choose them because it's interesting that as people get older, they neglect many social activities and find their identity precisely in politics. The us or them narrative has gripped ordinary Americans. Oops. I lost my way. Has gripped ordinary Americans. Fiery divisions weaken the institutions of the American state, so Congress often becomes very ineffective and the judiciary was slow. The problems then fuel the passions further. Movements like white supremacists, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter movement are increasingly radicalizing everyday American political life and leading to tensions. Violent protests led by left-wing movements lead to the destruction of city infrastructure, public and private property, cultural and artistic monuments, and religious buildings. Throughout most of 2020, the U.S. was rocked by the George Floyd protests, and in early 2021, the Trump invasion of Capitol Hill took place. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2022 to overturn 1973 Roe versus Wade decision that decriminalized abortion on the grounds that the right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the history or tradition of this country. Well, they could have ruled against it because the woman lied. You know what I'm saying? That's a better reason. But anyway, that controversial decision did not ban abortions, but left the issue to go to the states. 2 months later, the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence for alleged illegal possession of classified documents, even though Mr. Biden was found to illegally have classified documents as well, and they failed to neglect him. I just added that part for myself. There's also the right to arms as an object of conflict. The result of these events is an additional gap between blue and red America. Let's stop right there. Do y'all see how interesting this analysis is? And 9 months after someone prints this article and makes this analysis, you have a movie coming out with a fictional scenario about a civil war. Now, I didn't look into the company that's making a movie. I'll do that later because without question, if I could have any way possible, I'm going to see that movie. You know, and I probably do a movie review. From what I've seen, it seems like they wanted to make the movie to make people think, but they didn't want to really address what needed to be addressed in the movie. In my opinion, it's my opinion. But Brother Kevin says civil war in America is happening because of illegal great immigration, open borders, chemical biological warfare, and homophilia. But they're going to keep racism, white supremacy as a catalyst. Yeah, I mean, all of these things are destabilizing. And for me, the possibility is less of a, now this person, whoever wrote this article, is basically, they're breaking it down as a red state, blue state thing. I think it's really more likely that you will have a breakup of America into different regions, something similar to like a Yugoslavia type situation from back in the 80s, I believe, where it was one country and it broke up into different warring states. To me, that's much more probable because of the size of the United States. You're talking about 350 million or more people, 6 million square miles, you know, different climates and habitats and different political interests. I mean, there's a lot of differences that could easily just make people just start, because you already having, along with the illegal, legal immigration, you're really having a sort of reverse great migration that's slowly taking place just amongst Black people as people move more and more out of northern cities and go back into the South. That's something that's happening that we haven't talked about. So it's interesting to see that this is being talked about publicly. And I got one more article, and maybe I'll come back to this. Maybe I'll come back to this article, but I got one more clip that I want to play real quick as we're getting close to the time where I want to close out. But this is a clip from, I'm not sure when it was taken, but people who are Trump supporters were interviewed. And I want you all to listen to the language that is being said.
If he loses again, what does that mean to you?
I think we're going to be in big trouble if he doesn't win. I really am. I can't imagine Nikki Haley running the country. She gets very upset when she's being questioned about her daughter being on TikTok. She blew up at a debate. If Biden gets in again, it's all over. It's all over.
In what way?
We're going to be in World War III.
If Donald Trump were to lose again, what do you think that would mean?
I think it would mean that people are starting to have a voice. I think people are waking up and realizing, the people are realizing, enough people have been hurt financially. I think it took a lot of pain. It took people realizing they're starting to look and ask the questions that need to be asked.
No, I'm saying if he were to lose again.
What
would it mean?
I'm afraid, I'll be honest with you. If I worry about civil war and I fear that's what they're pushing us to. I fear they're really, truly pushing people to extremes. It's an age-old military tactic: polarize, divide, and conquer. And I feel like that two-party system is really doing a pretty good job.
Do you think President Trump has done well to not polarize, or do you think he's been among the polarizers?
I think that I from seeing knowing the real history and knowing that both political parties wanted him to run for years, and he didn't want to run. He told them he wouldn't run unless the country needed so bad a strait that it needed such economic straits that it needed a businessman, and it needed one. People are fed up with the investigations after They want to see something, and that's what they liked about Trump. He made promises and he kept them.
If Trump were to lose again, what would that mean to you?
It would depend on actually what were the results. You know, if
he lost again, like last time.
Well, if he lost like last time and they stole it from him, I would be very upset. But if he lost because the people just didn't actually vote for him, and Joe Biden isn't going to win fair and square. Who's going to vote for Joe Biden? People only vote for Joe Biden as revenge against Donald Trump. But look at where Joe Biden has gotten us. The country, young people like me can't afford homes. We're told that we're going to own nothing, be happy about it, live in the pod, eat the bugs. You know, that's what they want us to live like. We're not going to live like that. We're going to dedicate ourselves to making our country great again for everyone, even if they don't like us. Even if they think that we as America First Trump lovers, they think that we are racist, evil, mean, bad, and nasty. But no, I want to make this country better for everyone, and that's what we're going to do. And that's why I voted tonight for Trump, and that's why I'm here.
So you think the election was stolen last time?
It was definitely stolen.
Well, it wasn't definitely.
Even in 2022, I was in Arizona at the time. The way that they had in all the Republican precincts, they had lines out there. It's so obvious what they're doing. It's so obvious. The information is out there. I know that, the information is out there. That's what I have to say.
And where is that information?
It's out there.
What about you? What would it mean to you if Trump were to lose again?
Oh, I would personally be devastated. And primarily because of all the domestic issues that are happening. I'm sorry, the non-domestic issues, the wars, and the foreign countries will try to take advantage of it in a massive fashion. And I'm concerned about that. Now, I'm biased. My son's a Marine. He's a pilot. So he's going to get drawn into it. And if there's not a strong leader, everybody's going to be in trouble.
If President Trump were to lose again, what would that mean for you?
I'd be heartbroken. I would. I think he did a great job there. I really do. I mean, I volunteer at a Toll Street mission, and our numbers used to be 35 people twice a week. We are now up to 100 people twice a week. The food prices are through the roof.
Who would you blame that on? Would you blame that on this administration or on the pandemic, the condition we're in right now?
Who would I blame it on? I would blame it on the administration, okay? Some of the things, I don't know. I feel very bad for him. I will be honest with you, for Biden. The man is dementing. I'm trained in dementia. I see things that other people don't see. And quite honestly, sir, it's elder abuse.
If he were to lose again, what would that mean to you?
I would fear for our nation in terms of foreign policy, economic policy. I have kids and grandkids. The policies, that and laws that are passed today will have effects for, years, decades, and generations. And we're not going in the right direction.
All right, let's talk about it. You had a guy say, you had people say we're going in the wrong direction. You had people say they'd be devastated. You had a guy mention Civil War, right? You see what I'm saying? And you had a guy who normally would sound like a wild, goofy, conspiracy spitting redneck. And we would normally dismiss that guy. Because he's talking about they want us to get in the pot and eat the bugs and so forth and so on. And so the normal question would be, who is they? And we're not even going to get into the article. We're just going to look at the headline. This is the World Economic Forum's website. February 9th, 2022. Opinion piece states 5 reasons why eating insects could reduce climate change. Y'all saw that, right? So that when this guy said that they want us to eat bugs, sounds ridiculous. But the World Economic Forum website has an opinion. This is part of their opinion section. They have opened up their space for someone to state their opinion that eating bugs will reduce climate change. And of course, we know that they're saying that climate change is like the number one issue in the world, right? So you had people state their fear that the country could be at risk and that civil war could take place if Trump loses, right? And then you have a guy that says something that sounds on the surface, you got to admit, sounded kind of ridiculous. They want us to eat bugs. But here we are at the World Economic Forum website, and they want us to eat bugs. This is where we are in America. We're in a state in America where foreigners are analyzing America and stating it's on the verge of civil war. We have a movie that talks about a civil war. And then we have people who are right-leaning saying that it's possible that if Trump doesn't win, we have a civil war. And as Sister Farnessa just said, these people are armed to the teeth, ready for a civil war. And the primary issue that is driving this current debate and divide is the border. So that, brothers and sisters, is why I titled this From Border War to Civil War? Question mark. And I know I took the long roundabout way to make the connection, but y'all tell me, was the connection made between these two seemingly disparate issues? Y'all can put a 1 in the chat if that did take place. And I will say that we have received enough to upgrade the Dropbox so that we can distribute that video or those videos. So, brother, you got ripped off, and then the sister who is not here, brother, you got ripped off. Just send me your email, and I will upgrade that tomorrow and see. I'll try to send that out tomorrow night. And so, and then you can give me your critique on those two videos, and I'll take those suggestions and go from there. Let me see. Let me look at the individual, because I see the individual donations. I'm trying to see if anybody passed the $25 mark. Anyone additionally that I gotta send? No, leave that alone. Okay. So, brothers and sisters, you say production company DNA Films, distribution is A24. Yeah, I knew the distribution was A24, but I thought they were the publishers. Okay, I'll look into that. So, with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for joining me. I thank you all for sticking with me for these 2 hours. Also, be on the lookout. We have some more episodes of DC's Radical Thoughts dropping this week. And I am going to work on, see, I'm going to have to rest my voice tonight, but I am going to work on some radical reports and try to get them out this week as well And hopefully, though I can't guarantee, I will try to come on next weekend and do another episode of the center. What'd you say, brother? What's the yearly cost? Oh, you saying if you pay for the StreamYard yearly? That's a good question. I had to look it up, and give you that information later. I don't think I can do that right now without ending the stream. So again, man, I thank you all for hanging in there. I thank you all for your support. I thank everybody that donated. I appreciate y'all standing with me through these breaks from the show and support me. In the meanwhile, I think what I've decided to do is once we get to 750, I think I will apply for the lower tier YouTube monetization, and that will let me know whether or not there's a chance to achieve the higher tier monetization. So I think we need about 40 more subscribers. So if you know anybody that needs that is not subscribed, let them know. Send this show or send your favorite show to them. Send them the one with Cat Williams or the one on Black Leaders. Any one of those, or maybe if one of the older shows is one of your favorite, sure to check those out as well. And so with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing. I am your brother, DC Radical 1. With that, I will say BB for Hodie and straight black pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DC Radical1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for Hodie and straight black pride.